guys, my name is Cynthia. Let's talk books. And today I want to talk about books that I've had in my collection. They're sitting in my bookshelves and have been there the longest. Now, a few things about me that you should know is that, one, I do own a shit ton of books, but most of them are at my parents' house. Because growing up, when I first got into reading, I amassed books. I was like picking up books everywhere I could find them. Most of them have been read, to be fair. My dad built me this like huge bookshelf that took over this entire wall in the living room. And I think my parents, at first they didn't understand my love for reading, but once they did, they just embraced it, and I think they were proud that when people came to visit us, they would seal the books. They'd ask if they had all been read, and of course the answer was yes. So then I went to college, and in the middle, actually early in my college experience, my parents moved. They moved from California to Kansas, and my parents took most of my books. And then, all right, every winter and every summer I would spend in my parents' house in Kansas, and I would leave all of the like leftover books I had with them. So then I went to grad school. In grad school, I was, of course, getting more and more books, but mostly academic books. But I did pick up some fiction, like it was in it was in grad school that I read, like the Twilight series, for example, the Hunger Games, a bunch of romance novels. I was reading lighter stuff, and it was all earlier on in my grad school career. But then, after I was done with the class portion of graduate school, so the way most graduate programs work is that you take classes for a period of time, and then after that it's a matter of finishing your thesis or dissertation. So once I was done with classes, I actually got all of my books and took them to Kansas. At the time, it was because I was planning on living in Kansas with my family. That ended up not happening, but the result was that all of my books ended up in Kansas. And I ended up spending quite a bit of time in France, because that's what I had to do to complete my dissertation. My dissertation is on French history, so I spent time in France doing research. And then when I came back, I had lost my guaranteed housing at school, so I was moving around a lot. And when you're moving around a lot, you can't collect and have a bunch of books, because it's really strenuous to be packing and constantly moving boxes and boxes of books. All right, so finally I settled down. I found my boyfriend. We moved in together. And at that point, I had a ton of academic books. Most of them are actually back there. I didn't have a whole lot of fiction, because towards the second half of graduate school, I stopped reading fiction altogether. My main priority was finishing my dissertation, and that took up a lot of time, a lot of my energy, and I just didn't have like the mental capacity to do anything else. But here and there, I was picking up a few books, and that's really what's in my list here of the books I have owned that are sitting in my shelves right now that have been there the longest. I did have a Kindle. Once I came back from France, I realized that I couldn't own a ton of physical books, but that the Kindle could afford me the ability to have a bunch of books in here that I had access to. So I'm going to pick out a few from here that are books that have been sitting here for a long time unread. First, though, let's talk about the physical books I have. So it's not a ton. Most of the books that are currently sitting in my bookshelf that are not academic books, I've picked up in the last year. So they haven't been sitting there for a long time. But the book that I have currently that has been sitting in my bookshelf the longest is probably Sweet Française by Irène Némirovky. This is a book that I am actually planning on reading, and I'm hoping will be in my August wrap-up. But it's set in World War II France, and at the time that this first came out, it caused a lot of controversy because it deals with the themes of collaboration and the fact that most French people did not resist the Nazi regime, did not resist the Vichy regime. Most people collaborated in some form or another with the Nazi regime and the Vichy regime. So it kind of was a bit controversial because of that. It's a book that, as a French historian, I knew I really needed to read, but because my dissertation was not on World War II, I just kept putting it off, and I'm finally going to try to sit down and read it. And I'm hoping to do a dedicated review video on it, so watch for that on my channel. Next up is a book that I didn't acquire until after grad school, but my roommate in grad school had it, and I've been wanting to read it, and it is The Perfume Collector by Kathleen Tessaro. I don't remember much about this, so let me read the back real quick. It says, London, 1955. Grace Monroe is a fortunate young woman. Despite her sheltered upbringing in Oxford, her recent marriage has thrust her into the heart of London's most refined and ambitious social circles. However, playing the role of the sophisticated socialite her husband would like her to be doesn't come easily to her, and perhaps never will. Alright, blah blah blah. Let's see. One evening, a letter arrives from France that will change everything. Grace has received an inheritance from a mysterious benefactor, Eva d'Orsay, whom she's never met. Alright, so it looks really interesting. It's historical fiction, and I would just remember like seeing it on my shelf, reading the back, and thinking, I need to read this book. And I went ahead and bought it like 3 years ago, and I still haven't read it. So I'd like to get to it and finally read it. The last book I have that's been sitting on my shelf for a while, and I could probably tell you exactly how long it has been sitting in my shelf because I see a receipt here. It's a receipt from the Hudson News at McCarran International Airport. I bought this at an airport, guys, and I remember actually buying this at the airport because I was sitting there with hours to kill, and I went ahead and picked up this book. So when was it? Let's see, where's the date? It's December 25th, 2015. Oh, so I know exactly why I was at the Vegas International Airport. I was on my way to visit my family in Kansas, and usually there's not a whole lot of direct flights to Kansas. So you usually have to make a stop somewhere else. So I remember we were stopping in Vegas, and I'm pretty sure I was with my boyfriend. I think this was our trip to go where he first met my parents. Anyway, so it is The Last American Vampire by Seth Grahame-Smith. I have read another one of his books. It was Jane Austen and Zombies. So what he does, if you're not familiar, is take classics and kind of make them into these horror type settings. And I liked Jane Austen, and no, it was Pride and Prejudice and Vampires. I like that one. So this one's about Abraham Lincoln, vampire hunter. No, that was the other one. So why did I pick up this one? Let me see what this one's about. In Reconstruction era America, vampire Henry Sturgis is searching for renewed purpose in the wake of his friend Abraham Lincoln's shocking death. Henry's will be an expensive journey that will send him to England for an unexpected encounter with Jack the Ripper, then to New York City for the birth of a new American century, the dawn of the electric era of Tulsa and Edison, and the blazing disaster of the 1937 Hindenburg crash. Along the way, Henry goes on the road in a Kerouac-influenced trip as Seth Grahame-Smith ingeniously weaves vampire history through Russia's October Revolution, the First and Second World Wars, and the JFK assassination. Expansive in scope and serious in execution, The Last American Vampire is sure to appeal to the passionate readers who made Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter a runaway success. Alright, I know I picked up Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter at some point and never finished it. Where is that? That might actually be a book that's in Kansas. I'm going to check with my family and see if they have that and have them send it to me, because I can see myself just binging Grahame-Smith books because they're ridiculous and fun. Alright, books that have been on my Kindle forever. This summer I did actually read one of the book that I think has been on here the longest, which was Robogenesis. And it has seriously been one of my favorite books of the year so far. It was very, very good. And it had been a recommendation from my sister's significant other. Alright, I found some books on here that have been sitting on my Kindle for ages. The first is The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. I really want to read this one. I love historical fiction. It's one of the reasons why I decided to major in history. It was because reading historical fiction really made me interested in learning more about the eras, the history that I was reading about. So this one is set in during the World's Fair in Chicago. And there was a serial killer at the time killing young women. And I believe that's what this book is about. I'm not 100% sure. So if I'm wrong, I'll let you know over here. But I think that's what was in there. I have 50 Shades of Grey in here. I started reading that. And let me see how far I got on 50 Shades of Grey. Oh, it's not even downloaded on this Kindle. It was on my old one. Alright, this was a book that I think I got at least a third of the way into it, and then I decided I could not finish it. This is coming from somebody who loved Twilight, for the most part. Maybe at some point I'll finish 50 Shades of Grey. I can't promise anything there though. Oh man, I know people that really love it though, so just maybe so that I can fully either love it or hate it, I should at least read it. Okay, so one last book. Let me pick something else from here. A lot of these books I kind of have to go through because I don't know if I've read them or not. I had downloaded like a bunch of romance novels that were free through Kindle at the time, and I'm not sure if I read them or not. Alright, and so finally, the final book on here is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. I think at the very beginning when I got my first Kindle, I downloaded a bunch of classics that I wanted to read just to have them on there, and A Tale of Two Cities is definitely one that I should read at some point because it's part of it is set in London and the other city is Paris. And so Charles Dickens, I've read other Charles Dickens, so there's no reason why I haven't read this book yet, other than there's been other things to read. So this is it. These are all the books that I have on my bookshelves currently and on my Kindle that have just been sitting there unread for the longest. So let me know if you read any of them, what you think of them. Should I move them up? Should I not? Let me know. But for now, that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.